Hey, welcome to start like welcome to the latest series of On Tyranny. My name's Kurt Orzeck, music journalist and write for the Bad Penny. And my guest today talking about the horrendous state of affairs in the United States is, is Brian Amalfitano of Def Club, which is probably the perfect band if musicians to talk with about this subject. And I'm really grateful again. I told you before we press record, but I'm really grateful that you're participating in this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a time when I think everybody needs to speak out, and not everybody is. And that's okay. But say what you will. First of all, yeah, congratulations. You were just telling me you had a show the other night. Is that right?
Yeah, we just played in Vegas. It was a quick turnaround at the Museum of Punk Rock. Um, Justin had there was a zine, sort of DIY zine festival thing happening, and we were going to join part of it, and we played the night before.
Sweet. And are you still supporting the productive disruption release? Oh no, you're doing
Yeah,
the other
we should be doing the new record. I think our first full tour for We Demand a Permanent State of Happiness is coming out. Well, the album's out, but we're doing the tour with Melt Banana starting November. Yeah,
sweet. Oh, that's
November
awesome.
4th through like 16th, I believe. So,
Yeah. Cool. That's it. That's your first real formal tour?
we've done a couple. We've done Europe. We've done a little bit of East Coast. Definitely hit Texas a lot. Hit obviously San Diego and LA. We've done some West Coast stuff. Hopefully we'll do like a full US tour after the Melt Banana shows starting in 2026, and then I think we'll go to Europe again. So.
Right on. That's a wild opener. How'd you get hooked up with them?
We've done a tour with them before. Justin obviously knows them, Mel Banana and the Locust and everybody. They go way back, and so we did a small tour with them with the band Wand, and we
Yeah.
were opening that tour. It was us, Wand, and them. I love Corey Hansen's music as well.
Mhm.
So it was a cool bill for me to be a part of. And then they asked us to be part of this one again because we have our new album. So they're like, "Hey, let's tour again." So they're incredibly sweet people and awesome musicians as well. So yeah.
Yeah, right on. Um, that's what I was always always wondered why you guys are in Southern Lord if Justin has his own record label.
I think
You
it's
went G.
more like sort of the DIY mentality. Like also Justin has his own label, but it's just him,
Right.
essentially. So he wanted to be part of something where he wasn't so um hands-on with the other aspects of it instead of just being a band member, instead of being the singer, instead of, he didn't want to have to be like, "Hey, I have all these technical things. I have to print this. I have to do that." So we joined with
Yeah.
Southern Lord and linked up with Greg, who saw us live, and he said he wanted to put it out. So we felt like sort of that was, a good infrastructure for us with Southern Lord, and they were still sort of DIY, and they have that avant-garde sort of metal and more experimental aspect towards the label,
Mhm.
which was important for us as artists to, just be able to do whatever we wanted to do for
Yeah.
ourselves.
It's Greg Anderson of Sun and Goatsnake fame.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. Right on. Okay, so let's get right into it. I want to ask you first and foremost, like, how are you doing?
As well as any of us can do. I there's I remember this feeling when Trump was obviously first time when he was president the first time, and it's sort of a sense of anxiety and dread waking up every morning to see like what he's done today. What is it today that I have to wake up to and
Right.
read about and sort of be appalled by, and how will it affect our friends, our family, our neighbors. So there's just an overlying sense of dread and anxiety constantly.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's very stressful always. But yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like after January 20, Steve Bannon was kind of uh, orchestrating a lot of things, and
Mhm.
the whole idea was to flood the zone.
Yeah.
But it seems like it hasn't stopped, and it's just like,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I
uh,
feel like it's I mean beyond distraction tactics, I feel like it's a chaos president, There's no I would think that, during the first administration maybe he was chaotic, but he had some sort of conservatives or Republicans or something that were like, would kind of hold the line for the sake of democracy, quote unquote. But now he has just all these sycophants and Stephen Millers and Steve Bannons and all these people that think that no, the rule of law is in their favor and they could do whatever they want, and or you know, law is to be interpreted, and so they have the Supreme Court, and they have there's all these things that they've sort of already established years and years ago, and unfortunately, the Democrats also did not put any barriers, when people were screaming at them saying, "Hey, Project 2025 is real. It's going to happen." And they're like, "No, we're just exaggerating." And, everyone said the same thing. And here we are, not even a year into his presidency. And we have 3 plus 3.25 years almost of trying to deal with this and then undo a lot of
oh
what
yeah,
has been done, which is the bigger process, because a guy like that, one day he's just gonna die and that'll be it, and but we have to undo those things that he's undone, like women's rights and abortion and all these things for decades, if
yeah. Is it your sense that a generation has been lost?
yeah, I think that people will grow up. It's kind of grown up in a new generation of like, oh, this is normal, and so they won't know what they had before, or they won't know, what is necessarily possible without it being a complete struggle, because the internet and so many other things are sort of tearing them into sort of numbness, and into just either accepting it or being called woke or being whatever all these, things that are happening. So
Yeah,
it's kind of wild that yeah, this is being normal. I mean, you see it with the young Republicans and the people, they become complete assholes after Charlie Kirk died and said, "Oh, they're gonna inherit Kirk's legacy," and you're like, "Wow, these kids are getting younger and younger and being more and more, brought up to be not. I mean, it always existed. Racism always existed and sexism existed, but to not
yeah,
hide it, to be almost proud of it. So
yeah.
it's
And
just
I don't know if you caught what happened, or the news that came out today about the young
yes,
Republicans who are
yeah.
they're actually 24 to 35, I think.
35, yeah. Like,
Oh, yeah,
the way that JD Vance sort of tried to, oh, they're just joking around. It's that same sort of locker room talk, that they try to wash with
right.
Trump. It's like, oh, it's just guys talking in the locker room. It's like, well, not all men talk like that, and not all of us, think
Yeah,
that is proper ways to address other human beings at all, and they think it's a joke or they're edgy or whatever, and it's free speech, and they hide behind all these other things. It's like you could just say you're racist, dude. You could just say you're sexist, like
who's to say they won't tomorrow? Just, I mean,
yeah, yeah.
they're already saying like I liked Hitler and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Greg Gutfeld said it on Fox News, saying we take back the word Nazi, and you're like, what are we doing? How's that guy not fired? Like, so it's yeah, strange moment.
Same stand-up dude who called for the killing of all homeless people not so long ago.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and
yeah.
when Trump had James Carney from Australia, excuse me, Canada, the Prime Minister in the office last week. God, it was just last week. Um, he said, and the cameras were all pointing at them in the Oval Office, and he said, "Oh, we can't wait to have Canada be the 51st state." Making that
Mhm.
flag, and then you just brush it off as a joke. And it seems like they've really managed to capitalize on this whole. Oh, if it's just comedy, then we can say whatever.
Yeah, yeah. That we're just still exaggerating or being easily offended. until it actually happens and they're like, how, this is just normal now for people. JD Vance especially. I mean,
Right.
but obviously we can't use humor against them because now, if we say anything, we're Antifa. If we, it's just the double standards of how we as the left,
Right.
people what they consider the left, so depending how far left you are, like we're politically violent and we're, terrorists, but white supremacists and people that shoot up schools are not, and they have the mental. It's always a white guy always has mental health issues. If it's anyone else, they're monsters, but white
Yeah.
kids are always it's mental health. It's like, well, you took away all the mental health, everything that they tried to pass for mental health, you removed it,
Yeah.
so it's like, what do you're not going to improve the situation in any way, shape, or form.
Right. Yeah. Just I think it was Friday. They cut half the staff at SAMS, SAMSHA, which is the federal agency that specifically focuses on mental health. Our RFK Jr. just slashed them in half.
Yeah.
Um, so part of the reason I'm doing the series too is because I was uh, everybody. I've been watching way too much of the news, but it always seems like the same conversation between like talking heads and pundits, and I'm really um, interested to hear what artists have to say and how they're directly being affected. I sort of think of artists as being like I'm not just a canary in a coal mine, but like just more sensitive to like things changing in the country and respond to that through their art.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm kind of curious, like, um, how, from that vantage point, you're responding to things like, is it with increased anger, more complexity in your lyrics? How are you sort of responding artistically to what's happening?
Yeah, I think obviously Justin as a lyricist has always been interesting to me in The Locust and every other project that he's done, but it's very, with Def Club a little bit,
Yeah.
he says negative, but it has this esoteric sort of shape to it where you could interpret things, where we're talking about uh, things like nihilism for dummies or songs like that, where he talks about Mars lifestyle and he talks, so obviously there's like hidden political things. There's a, tech guy that thinks that Mars is going to be, his conquest. And, but as far as music goes, I think we've always, for me, I've had this dystopian sci-fi sort of futuristic, um, atomic punk sort of thing that I wanted to emulate. There's these laser sounds and there's these kind of dial-up modem sounds and these sort of breaking downs of traditional sounds into making it almost futuristic, but in a dystopian way,
Mhm.
There's what a lot of people like is like the retro sort of mid-modern, mid-century modern sort of vibe of like, the Jetsons, but we're like, more like Fallout or something like that.
Yeah.
So we have that thing, and I think there's a lot of other bands that kind of have that. There's an Australian band that I love called Tropical Fuckstorm, and
Mhm.
they have that, Gareth Lydiard has that kind of vibe where it sounds kind of disturbing and ominous, and when you involve that with punk rock and the politics of punk and art punk or any number, whatever you want to categorize it as, we kind of didn't look towards the past of punk rock so much as how we could represent a future, and soundtrack it. Unfortunately, it sounds like, you know, an evil AI taking over the world and but that I think reflected the mood of always of tension in the things that we create with musically as well as lyrically in Def Club.
Yeah.
And even the names productive disruption or we demand a permanent state of happiness is, sort of how do you fight an algorithm? How do you fight
Yeah.
how do you go on Instagram and constantly need that dopamine kick? How do you do it like a normal human being versus, a zombie, attached to this technological future that we have that's coming faster than anyone's sort of prepared for mentally, you know?
Right. What what sort of uh maybe not solution, but like what kind of response did you wind up learning to have in that sort of a world by making this new record?
I think um, I think always what I've learned about situations like this is that like your social how you relate in society, how you relate to people, how you find core groups of people is very important, even in the DIY sort of world of punk rock and us meeting each other and having something to say as a group. You
Mhm.
know, now I own a record store, and every Thursday we have a community meeting where we have other business owners and other even local politicians, city politicians, and people that come and we speak about what's going on with the ICE raids. We say, okay, we look at other cities and see what policies they've been passing to help with legal aid and things like that. So
Yeah.
we get together every Thursday. We meet up and we discuss the new situations for the week. And then we say, okay, we're going to go to this city council meeting this week, this city council this week, and we sort
Huh?
of plan things. And it becomes like a social structure of like, okay, we're not alone
Yeah.
and you can fight back as a group, right? And certain people of the group have certain strengths, and so they go out and they protest physically, and some do like an economic thing, and some do, so you could do all sorts of things. With me, beyond just going to protests, we call out a lot of the politicians from our local city government. I call out a lot of the businesses that don't, say that they support the immigrant community. A lot of them get pissed.
Mhm.
And, some people tell me that it's bad business and then I'm going to lose business, but it is what it is. I'd rather be in a tight community of good people than be quiet just because I'm worried about my bottom line, you know.
That's super cool, man. Did you start that?
No, it was actually started by a buddy of mine, Alan. He owned a place called Chismosa Cafe, and they had it started having communal meetings there. And he invited me to participate. He ended up closing the restaurant, and then he asked if we could move it over to the record store, and we've been doing it every Thursday.
That's rad, dude. I've talked to probably about 35 artists for the series, and I haven't heard anybody um, say that they're engaging in that sort of concrete action. Well, which isn't to say the protest isn't a concrete action, but like through the system, sort of in a way.
Sure. Yeah, I think where there's different ways. I've learned that, I've always been more aggressive, with what I say and do, and not worry about the consequences, which is
Yeah.
still kind of what I do on say my store's social media or whatever. And then there's other people in there that could say, okay, well, politically, we have to work with these people to do this and do this, and so sometimes we have prepared speeches with each other, and we go up there and we discuss it, all together, and so it's a cool sort of group of you know, a democratic way of doing things as opposed to me yelling at the air, really, really pissed off or whatever. So I can learn from them, and then I think sometimes they learn from me, and or they get a kick, but I just don't give a shit sometimes. You know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, the word community was being tossed around even before all this stuff started happening, but it seems like the people who are most um they're finding their center, or they're somehow finding a way to, you know, navigate through all this, have found a community of some kind, and
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
real way. And if you think about it, I mean, the only way that MAGA can really win, is by demagoguing,
mhm,
which is by definition of breaking up of different communities
yeah.
of people. So I gotta ask you before we go further, what is your church say? Because people are gonna
There's no music under late
Nice.
capitalism.
Cool. I was thought I could go a few different ways. So that's really, again, that's super admirable, dude. And I hope some people who are watching this will take a similar initiative, because that seems like a really effective way to deal with things.
Yeah, and if I could add, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be like, some people are afraid of like being outspoken, like we have trans members who don't necessarily want to be vocal on social media because they get a lot more hate than say me. You know what I mean? I'm a white passing guy, my family comes from Argentina. We're obviously Malay and all that other shit happening right now in Argentina, but like,
Yeah.
a lot of there's also members of the group that just do mutual aid. So like they're, raising funds and or just taking donations of food or taking school supply donations for people that have been affected by, the raids. So, if their parents have been deported, here's food for aid, here's school supplies so that you go to school, and so, it becomes just different strengths. Building a community doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, we all have to be super active and do, they all think we're all Antifa or something. But
Yeah, right. Well, that's their kind of folly, is that they think that there's some sort of a homogenous train of thought on the
yeah,
left. And actually, the left's difficulty over the years has been the large tent aspect of it sometimes.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I'm happy you brought up Argentina because
Mhm.
I studied there from 98 to 99 for about 6 months, and
Cool.
which is about 6 or 7 years after Pinochet was pushed out of power. 92, I think it was 92 when he left, and then went to Spain and was extradited. But one thing that I try to tell people is like, the aftermath of living in a dictatorship, it goes on for a very long time. That sense of
Yeah,
fear.
absolutely. Yeah.
And I remember distinctly being on a bus, just like a city bus, and a car exhaust pipe backfired, and everybody jumped up and started crying, thinking that it was
Yeah.
a bomb. And you drive by, go by the banks and see guys with machine guns. And the university I went to got tear gassed every single week by tanks, and that was after Pinochet. Uh,
Mhm.
so I'm curious, do you have any recollections of Argentinian society behaving in a similar way to what's going on now? Or
I mean, Argentina and most Latin America has had a lot of bad politics. I lived there in 94. We moved back. My parents came here
well,
in 79. So both my parents from Argentina. My grandparents on my dad's side left Italy, obviously due to fascism and Mussolini. They went to Argentina. Then they had in the 70s, they had Videla and the military dictatorship there. Um, so my dad remembers the desaparecidos movement, which is the disappeared people that they would
yeah,
they'd combine green Ford Falcons and stop if you had long hair, if you resembled a hippie, a commie, they would just call you a commie and they disappeared you. And that's thousands and thousands of people. And those effects still, exist today. You have the mothers of the disappeared, los madres de los desaparecidos, and you have, a lot of things that happened. Obviously, Perón was a left-leaning, but he was also military. Everyone thinks that he was super good, but he obviously allowed the Nazis to come in and, buy themselves into the north.
of
So a
course.
lot of the German population Nazis that came there, you have, a lot of history of all these weird political situations,
Yeah,
mostly for money,
right.
they got to buy their freedom there. My dad came here in 79. When we moved back, we tried to get our citizenship, but the presidency, I think it was like four presidents in 1 week. They just kept stealing money and running away, and a lot of even the quote unquote left-leaning people like Kirchner and you know, they stole tons of money. Now you have Milei, who's a libertarian conservative, sort of right-winger, who is the one that gave Elon Musk the chainsaw. And now they have a $20 billion bailout. And so you see all those things. I just recently actually went a couple months ago to visit my grandfather,
Mhm.
and you hear every month, oh, they're cutting retirees and Social Security. They're cutting their money for how much they could get paid. It's wild. You're thinking this guy just got a $20 billion bailout and he's throwing rock and roll concerts instead of, helping the elderly or helping the disabled or doing anything really.
Yeah,
So, and then Musk and Doge attempted to do that here as well. And so I see the parallels between both countries because I follow both, the news and I have so much family there and I visit
of course.
quite often, live there. So it's pretty wild.
Yeah. I actually heard today, I don't know if this has been verified yet, but I heard it's actually 40 million or 40 billion that he gave instead of 20 billion, which is
Yeah, I actually saw that Trump he did a speech where he said, yeah, we're gonna give Milei this money, but he's running against this leftist, and if the leftist one wins, we're not gonna give Argentina any money. And everyone's like, so you're not actually helping Argentine people, you're helping your buddy that you want to get reelected, which is meddling, in the political affairs of other countries, which obviously the United States has done
of course.
forever, with the CIA and with everything else. But I think they're also trying to do it with Venezuela right now with, Rocha, and she won the Nobel Peace Prize, and which is again weird because, they all think that she's left-leaning compared to Maduro or Chavez and stuff like that. But she's pretty, I mean, she's a Zionist and pro-Israel and, wanted to sell the oil fields and privatization of oil for America, basically, just export it all. And the people are the one that are going to end up poorer and poorer while the politicians get richer and richer, like always.
Absolutely. Like always. Exactly. Yeah. Um, so I'm kind of curious, shifting gears here a little bit, like the word I've heard probably come up more often than any other word when I read about Def Club or talk to people about Def Club is nihilism, which you mentioned before, like a nihilist approach to music. Um, can you talk about why that is effective on like an artistic level, but not in the Doge level, or maybe
Mhm.
it's just being misused as a term?
Yeah, I think it's a sort of like an absurdist version of nihilism, obviously we care, we care a lot, and it's sort of an overwhelming feeling, but the absurdity of um, screaming about something that, not we, but like punk rock has been screaming about for, well over 60 years, it's like, oh, it's like, and even folk music or any sort of protest song, anything, any sort of person that wants to tell the truth through their art, and I think there's a lot of people, especially in punk rock, because I've seen that there's this sort of backlash to what they think punk rock means, which is freedom of to say anything, which is to be edgy, be an asshole, be super, super, not care about marginalized group, not be inclusive, sort of be more macho, sort of this conservative punk shit that's happening,
Right.
this uber hardcore workout bro music, And so we're sort of the antithesis of that and have always been, like we've always been maybe more uh, sort of mocked, and because we're into maybe, I don't know, like I have Divine or John Waters or like queer culture, or like, people think we're effeminate because, you're if you're skinny when you're growing up and all this stuff. So we kind of like mock all of that, including maybe ourselves and sort of um the whole situation of the world, because you have to, at least Justin has always been like that we should have a bit of comedy to lighten the load of our delivery, you
Right.
know. So it's you know, maybe if I related it to like a comedy thing, it's like Mark Maron, where he talks about things where it's like it sounds really depressed, but I feel like it's just a way of getting it out there so that you could work through it.
That's right.
I admire him a lot when I listen to him talk. I'm like, man, he nailed like 50 points in that one speech, you know. Whereas Joe Rogan or some dumbass, you're just like, what is this shit? What, I don't understand, but obviously there are people that prefer to have a generic message and get the most amount of likes and the most amount of whatever. We're
Yeah.
a niche band and we're a niche people. We just want to have good people at our shows. We want to have, we want to support good people, even if it's a smaller amount of people, you know.
Yeah. Have you been gratified or disappointed by the response to what's going on from like the punk rock community as a whole, especially the underground punk rock community?
As far as what's happening with Trump,
Yeah.
yeah, I think Yeah, no, I'm not satisfied. I'm not satisfied. I mean, there's so many things, obviously there's you could get mad at a punk band or any band in general for playing a festival that, is sponsored by whomever, who is also owned by a mega conglomerate, who sponsors this, who sponsors that. And there's just so many ways of like not knowing that now. But also when you get called out, you have to have maybe some people that can take that criticism and be like and learn from it and be like, hey, we're going to donate our money to this or we're going to do that or whatever, versus get offended. And I think a lot of punk rockers are getting more offended rather than, listening. And it's, because I think it's a sort of backlash to cancel culture and the Me Too movement. And so everyone's like, they just think that they're going to get canceled and they're worried about it. It's like you don't get canceled if you're not an asshole. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Just
That's right.
you learn, you know what I mean? And then punk rockers, obviously, or even people that like, the internet is full of people that listen to Rage Against the Machine and didn't have a fucking clue what they meant, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
or Dead Kennedys or any political band. It's like keep
Absolutely.
politics out of music, keep politics out of sports, It's like, what was Jackie Robinson doing for the Dodgers? What was yeah, there's always been politics in sports. You're just
Yeah.
a little bit worried that it's going to come after you next or something. I mean, it's happening with Bad Bunny for the Super Bowl. It's like he's not, they need an American. It's like Puerto Rico's fucking American, dude. Like, like it,
Not according to Tony Hinchcliffe, who gave that lovely
yes, yes.
address at the yeah.
But again, I think everyone that grew up in that, there's different types of punk. I grew up in a punk that believes in inclusivity and art and sort of creating something different and not being such a conformist. I don't have Liberty spikes and studded jackets. I grew up listening to a lot of different music. Um, I I don't think I'm the type of punk that is into Gigi Allen and thinks that I could say whatever the fuck I want in any words without repercussions because that's really punk rock. It's like, so yeah, it just depends on the type of punk rock you grew up with, and I guess most of them didn't grow up with the right one.
Last question, because we have about 4 minutes left. You'll probably reject these words, but throughout this conversation, what keeps popping up in my head is the fact that like you seem to be a man of character and like morality, and is disorient. It's a disorienting to like feel that way given your style of music and playing and you,
No, I think I grew up. My grandpa taught me how to be pragmatic. As a kid, he gave me books on atheism, and it's like, how do you argue against God with rational thoughts and pragmatic? How do you argue with someone with facts? And so you have to kind of hold steady to that and know that what you're doing is truthful. And or that you're willing to learn and be taught where
Mhm.
most people, don't have that. But I'm grateful to have that.
Yeah. Actually, I can slip one more question in.
Sure.
Are you hopeful?
Always. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
You have to keep hope. If not for not necessarily myself, but keep hope for others.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like, how can you, that's the only remaining option, right?
Yeah, because if I give up as a person of that has much more privilege than a lot of people,
Mhm.
um, what do they do? You
Mhm.
know, so you have to be hopeful.
And are you scared at all?
Oh yeah, yeah. Every day there's something that you think this cannot get worse, and somehow they managed to do it. So,
Yeah.
um, not fearful of like for my life or anything, but scared of what it will do to the mentality of others and. Um, not to get it super downer, but like the amount of suicide that will occur in, you know, trans people and other people that, yeah, have already been marginalized for a long time. So,
Hard enough in the first place with them.
yeah,
Well, cool, man. I don't think you could have done more justice this time we had like 35 minutes, and it's
thank
been
you.
such a enlightening experience to hear from you, and I really appreciate it. Can you uh plug your websites and works and all that for the last
Sure.
minute
Yeah,
we got?
yeah, you could order We Demand a Permanent State of Happiness through 31G. The band will be on tour in November with Melt Banana. You could grab our variant as well on tour. We also have weird kazoos and all sorts of other weird shit. You could buy the Southern Lord variant. Um, of course, always support DIY and coming to a show and speaking to us and being in person. It's good to be a human being.
Cool. I always say this for the end when it's appropriate, but it's one of my favorite records of the year. So
Thank
uh,
you.
I appreciate you releasing it when you did, and it's so relevant and just so now, and also I can see the lasting potential of it, in the future too. So yeah, it's really my pleasure speaking with you, Brian. So
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
yeah, of course. Okay. Um, and maybe we'll have another get together when the tour is done to see what the state
Sure.
of affairs is at that point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure we have years left of this shit. We have a
Scary.
lot of things.
Yeah.
Um,
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good.